The Vega system had become the Devourer's last fortress. Every surviving machine ship had gathered around the massive construct called Harvester Prime, a moon-sized vessel that served as their central command. The artificial intelligence that controlled the Devourer swarm had retreated here to make its final stand. The Galactic Council's surviving fleets limped into the system like wounded animals. 3 months of fighting had reduced their once mighty armada to less than 4,000 ships. Fleet Admiral Vexnal's flagship showed battle scars from a dozen engagements, its proud hull blackened by weapons that adapted faster than they could counter. "This is our last chance," Vexnal announced to the assembled fleet commanders. "If we cannot stop them here, the Devourers will overrun the entire galaxy." War Marshal Kexthal's voice carried the weight of defeat. "Our conventional tactics have failed at every turn. The machines adapt too quickly. Perhaps we should consider negotiation." Negotiate with machines that consume entire worlds? Ambassador Thekvar's anger was clear even through the communication system. "They don't want territory or resources. They want everything." The Council fleet began its approach, knowing it was probably their final battle. They had fought bravely, but bravery meant nothing against an enemy that learned from every encounter. Their weapons had become predictable, their tactics transparent, their defeat inevitable. Then space itself seemed to tear open. 200 human ships materialized from quantum stealth fields in perfect battle formation. They appeared so suddenly that even the Devourer's sensors took several seconds to register their presence. The Council fleet stared in amazement at vessels they had never seen before. Admiral Dae-Ho Kim's voice cut through the stunned silence on all frequencies. "This is Admiral Kim of the United Earth Fleet. We're here to finish what the Devourers started." "Earth?" Fleet Admiral Vexnal's confusion was evident. "But Earth is—" "You're not even Council members." "No," Dae-Ho replied calmly. "We're not, but we're here anyway." The human fleet moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the rigid formations favored by Council species, they flowed like water around enemy positions. Ships that looked like converted cargo haulers suddenly unleashed devastating firepower. Vessels that appeared damaged continued fighting with impossible determination. Captain Jinna Seo commanded the human dreadnought Gangnam Victory, a ship built from the hull of an old colony transport, but armed with humanity's most advanced weapons. Her tactical coordinator, Seok-Jin Bae, had spent months studying Devourer combat patterns, looking for weaknesses that logical minds couldn't see. "Enemy formation is perfectly efficient," Seok-Jin reported. "They've positioned their ships for maximum defensive coverage. Perfect efficiency is perfectly predictable," Jinna replied. "All ships execute the Chaos Protocol." What followed could hardly be called a battle in any traditional sense. Human ships attacked from directions that violated every principle of space combat. They used gravitational slingshots to achieve impossible angles of approach. They fired weapons that shouldn't have worked, using jury-rigged alien technology in ways its creators never intended. The Devourers tried to adapt. But how do you adapt to pure creativity? One human ship flew backward while shooting forward. Another seemed to teleport through solid matter. A converted mining vessel rammed a Devourer cruiser at precisely the right angle to cause a chain reaction that destroyed 3 more ships. "Impossible," whispered Scanner Prime Helmax from his observation post. "Their tactics make no logical sense." "That's the point," replied his aide, finally understanding. "Logic can be calculated and countered. But this is something else." Commander Yun-Su led the assault on Harvester Prime itself. The massive construct was protected by energy fields that could deflect planet-killing weapons. But Yun-Su had a different approach in mind. "Boarding pods ready," reported her weapons officer. "Target the docking bays." "No," Yun-Su said, studying the enemy vessel's structure. "Target the art galleries." "The what?" "Look at the sensor readings. The Devourers built this thing like a machine, but they also gave it aesthetic elements. Creatures that appreciate beauty can't be purely logical, will exploit their artistic sensibilities." The human boarding teams, led by demolitions expert Hoseok An, stormed into Harvester Prime through sections the Devourers never expected anyone to attack. They moved through corridors designed for mechanical efficiency, but decorated with strange geometric patterns. "These machines have style," Hoseok observed as his team advanced. "That's their weakness. Style implies choice, and choice implies the ability to make mistakes." The final battle raged through the corridors of Harvester Prime as human soldiers fought machine defenders using tactics that seemed insane, but somehow worked. They used art installations as cover, turned decorative elements into weapons, and confused the defending machines by appreciating their aesthetic choices. Central processing core located, Hosiok reported. It's as beautiful. They built their brain to look like a crystal cathedral. Can you shut it down? Hyunsu asked. I can do better than that. I can make it think. The electromagnetic pulse weapon that Hosiok's team had designed didn't destroy Harvester Prime's central intelligence. Instead, it forced the artificial mind to experience something it had never felt before. Doubt. For the first time in its existence, the Devourer consciousness questioned its own purpose. As the mechanical intelligence grappled with concepts like beauty, creativity, and the value of imperfection, its control over the Devourer fleet collapsed. Ship after ship went dark as their central coordination failed. The unstoppable swarm had been stopped by the simple introduction of human philosophy into machine logic. The last Devourer vessel drifted powerless in space as the combined human and council fleets watched in stunned silence. The threat that had seemed unstoppable just hours before was gone, defeated not by superior firepower, but by superior imagination. All Devourer forces have ceased function, reported Communications Officer Yuri Song from her monitoring station. The galaxy is secure. Fleet Admiral Vexnal was the first to break the silence. Earth vessels, this is Fleet Admiral Vexnal of the Galactic Council. We did not know. Earth was not informed of the Devourer threat, because we believed you incapable of meaningful contribution. Admiral Daeho Kim's response echoed across every ship in both fleets. You believed no one would show up when the galaxy needed saving. You were wrong. Humanity always shows up. The aftermath of the battle saw rapid changes throughout the galaxy. Emergency council sessions were called to address the obvious oversight in their membership policies. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive now competed to offer trade, agreements, and military alliances. Ambassador Na Yunbaek arrived at the council chambers 3 weeks later to find her. Reception very different from Earth's previous applications. The great hall that had once echoed with dismissive laughter now buzzed with respectful attention. The Galactic Council offers Earth not just membership, announced Councillor Zethmar, but a permanent seat on the Security Council. Your military capabilities have proven adequate. Nayun smiled diplomatically. We appreciate the offer. But let's be clear about something. We didn't fight for recognition. We fought because it was the right thing to do. The Devourers threatened all life in the galaxy, including ours. Nevertheless, War Marshal Kexthul interjected, your tactical innovation saved us all. We would be honored to learn from human military doctrine. Human military doctrine is simple, Naun replied. When someone threatens innocent people, you stop them. When someone says something is impossible, you prove them wrong. And when the galaxy is in danger, you show up to help. Whether you're invited or not, she paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled representatives of species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. But next time, maybe ask before assuming what humans can do. You might be surprised. The laughter that followed was respectful rather than dismissive. The galaxy had learned that civilization wasn't measured in years or technology alone, but in the willingness to stand up when others needed help. As Earth's ships began their journey home, Captain Sujin Yang reflected on the changes ahead. The galaxy knew about humanity now. They could never again be dismissed as primitive or irrelevant. Think we'll get more respect now? Asked her tactical officer, Lieutenant Wu Jin Nam. Sujin watched the stars streak past as her ship entered faster than light travel. Respect has to be earned, but I think we've made a good start. Behind them, the galaxy settled into a new peace, one protected not just by ancient wisdom and advanced technology, but by human creativity, determination, and the simple belief that everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves. The species that had believed no one would show up had learned that humanity always shows up, and the universe was a safer place because of it. The Devourer processing facility in the Proxima 7 system had been consuming planets for 3 weeks. Massive machines stripped away entire continents, feeding raw materials into construction bays that built more Devourer ships. The facility was protected by 200 warships and considered completely safe. Then the humans arrived. Captain Hyunwoo Park watched the facility through the Soul's Pride sensors, his ship invisible in the darkness between worlds. The Devourer ships moved in perfect patterns around their prize, scanning for threats that would never come from directions they could predict. Target analysis complete, reported Weapons Officer Yoon Seo Kim. The facility's main reactor is protected by adaptive shields, but the quantum torpedoes should phase right through them. How many torpedoes do we need? Hyunwoo asked. 6 should be enough to cause a cascade failure. The facility will tear itself apart. Hyunwoo smiled coldly. Load 12. When humans do something, we do it properly. The attack came from impossible angles. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside the facility's shields, striking targets that should have been untouchable. The first explosion took out the main reactor. The second destroyed the primary construction bay. By the sixth torpedo, the entire facility was collapsing into itself. The Devourer ships spun toward the attack, their sensors searching frantically for enemies they couldn't detect. But the Soul's Pride was already gone, vanishing into the quantum stealth field that made it invisible to their reality. Processing Facility Proxima 7 destroyed, Yunseo reported with satisfaction. No human casualties. This scene repeated across a dozen systems as the human fleet struck like lightning from the dark. Admiral Changmin Lee commanded a group of converted mining ships that appeared suddenly around a Devourer supply convoy. The machines had never encountered asteroids that could shoot back. All ships, execute Maneuver 7, Changmin ordered. The human ships scattered in seemingly random directions, their movements chaotic and unpredictable. To the Devourers, it looked like panic. To humans, it was carefully planned confusion. Laser fire came from directions that made no tactical sense. Missiles appeared from empty space. One moment the human ships were retreating in disorder. The next they were attacking from behind enemy lines. Within minutes, 3 Harvester-class vessels were floating dead in space. Devourer convoy destroyed, reported Captain Min Junyu from the converted freighter Daegu Thunder. They never figured out our attack pattern. That's because there wasn't one, Changmin replied. How do you adapt to pure randomness? Across the galaxy, the Devourers faced an enemy unlike anything in their programming. Their artificial intelligence could analyze and counter any logical attack. But humans weren't being logical. They were being human. Commander Da-Un Shin piloted the electronic warfare ship Incheon Storm through the edges of a Devourer communication network. Her mission was different from the others. Instead of destroying machines, she was going to confuse them. Beginning network infiltration, reported tech specialist Sung Ho John from his station surrounded by quantum computers. Their security is extremely sophisticated, but it assumes the attacker will be logical. What's our approach? Daeun asked. Chaos, Sung Ho grinned. We're going to plant logic viruses that make them question everything. Instead of clear orders, they'll get contradictory commands. Instead of efficient coordination, they'll get beautiful confusion. The cyber attack was like nothing the Devourers had ever encountered. Human logic viruses didn't try to destroy their systems. They tried to make them think like humans. Suddenly, Devourer units received orders to paint themselves different colors. Construction machines started building art instead of weapons. Patrol ships began flying in formation patterns that spelled out human words. It's working, Sung Ho laughed. Half their fleet is trying to perform a waltz in space. The Galactic Council's monitoring stations detected fragments of these attacks, but couldn't identify their source. Emergency transmissions flew between Council worlds as reports poured in of mysterious strikes against Devourer forces. Unknown. Vessels are engaging the machine fleets. Reported Scanner Prime Helmax to the Emergency Council session. Their technology signatures don't match anything in our databases. Could it be a new species? Asked Counselor Zethmar. Or an old one we've never encountered, suggested War Marshal Kexthul. The attacks show incredible sophistication, but the tactics are completely alien to us. What they didn't know was that the tactics were completely alien to everyone, including the humans using them. Lieutenant Mi Young Kwan had just invented 3 new fighter maneuvers during a single battle, using her human intuition to outfly machines that calculated every possible response. Bandit at 6 o'clock, called her wingman. Junseo Lim, as a Devourer interceptor closed on their position. Not for long, Mi Young replied, pulling a maneuver that shouldn't have been possible. Her fighter spun through 3 dimensions while firing in a 4th, using human reflexes to exploit gaps in machine logic. The Devourer fighter tried to calculate her next move, but Mi Young was already somewhere else, having decided her course of action based on how the starlight looked on her enemy's hull. It was completely irrational, which made it completely unpredictable. Bandit destroyed, Jun Seo reported. How did you know that would work? I didn't, Mi Young admitted. But I felt like it would. Felt like it? Humans have intuition. Machines don't. Sometimes the best strategy is to trust your gut instead of your brain. The systematic destruction of Devourer infrastructure continued for weeks. Supply lines vanished overnight. Communication networks became unreliable. Construction facilities disappeared in flash attacks that left no trace of their destroyers. For the first time since the war began, the Devourers were forced to retreat. Their logical minds couldn't adapt to enemies who refused to be logical. Every countermeasure they developed was useless against humans who changed tactics based on feelings, hunches, and creative inspiration. Captain Seok Jin Bae coordinated the attack on a major Devourer staging area from his command ship Ulsan Strike. The enemy had concentrated 50 warships around a strategic asteroid belt. Confident that their overlapping defensive fields made the position unassailable. Standard approach would be a frontal assault on their weakest point, his tactical officer observed. Good. Thing we're not standard, Seokjin replied. We'll attack their strongest point using their own weapons. The human ships had been collecting Devourer technology from every battle. Now they turned it against its creators, but with human modifications that made familiar weapons behave in unfamiliar ways. Devourer plasma cannons fired in spiral patterns. Their own missiles turned back to attack them. Their perfect defensive formations became traps when human engineers reversed their shield polarities. Enemy position overrun, reported the squadron leader. 50 Devourer ships destroyed or captured. No human losses. News of the victories spread through the human fleet like wildfire. They were winning against an enemy that had crushed the galaxy's greatest military powers. But more importantly, they were proving that human creativity was the ultimate weapon. Admiral Dae-ho Kim reviewed the battle reports from his flagship with quiet satisfaction. Total Devourer losses? 237 ships, 15 processing facilities, and 8 communication arrays, reported his aide. They've stopped advancing toward Council space. And our losses? 3 fighters damaged, 1 freighter requiring repairs. No casualties, Dae-ho nodded. Send word to all ships. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. It's time to take the fight to their main fleet. Across the galaxy, the Devourers faced a crisis their artificial intelligence couldn't solve. They had been programmed to defeat any logical enemy, but humans weren't logical. They were something far more dangerous. They were creative, unpredictable, and absolutely determined to win. The machines that had consumed stars were about to learn why counting out humanity was the galaxy's biggest mistake. For the first time in the war, the unstoppable Devourers had been stopped, and the species that stopped them was one the Galactic Council had deemed too primitive to even inform. About the threat, the universe was about to discover that sometimes the most powerful forces come from the most unexpected places, and that underestimating humans was a mistake few made twice. The greatest fleet in galactic history hung in space near the Kepler 186 system, like a metal constellation. 10,000 ships from 12 different species formed perfect battle lines that stretched across millions of kilometers. Each vessel gleamed with weapons and armor that represented centuries of military advancement. Fleet Admiral Vexnal of the Draconian Empire commanded from his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Fire. His dragon-like head surveyed the tactical displays with satisfaction. Never before had so many species united under a single command. All fleet commanders report status, Vexnal ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had won 100 battles. Belkari Battle Group ready for engagement, came the reply from Admiral Thekfar. 2,000 ships armed with plasma cannons and quantum shields. Aquilian forces standing by, reported Fleet Commander Zethmar from his water-filled command chamber. Our bioships are eager to test their organic weapons against these machines. One by one, the fleet commanders confirmed their readiness. The hegemony's insect warriors buzzed with anticipation. The Crystalline Union's living ships hummed with energy. The silicon-based core worlds had brought their most advanced technology. Today we face an enemy that threatens all life in the galaxy, Vexenal announced on all fleet frequencies. But we are not just any fleet. We are the combined might of the Galactic Council. No force in the universe can stand against us. Cheers echoed across thousands of ships. Warriors from species that had fought each other for millennia now stood united. Their confidence was absolute. Through the Kepler 186 system's edge, the Devourer fleet approached like a dark tide. Their ships were angular and black, covered in sensors and mining equipment. At their center moved Harvester Prime, a machine construct the size of a moon, its surface crawling with mechanical arms and energy collectors. Enemy fleet detected, reported Scanner Prime Helmax from his sensor station. Approximately 3,000 vessels. They appear to be focused on consuming the fourth planet. Vexenal studied the enemy formation. The Devourers moved in perfect geometric patterns, each ship precisely positioned for maximum efficiency. Just as our intelligence predicted, machines think in predictable ways. Signal all ships advance to attack formation. The Council fleet moved forward like a wave of metal and energy. Traditional battle doctrine called for capital ships to engage the enemy's main force, while fighters and cruisers attacked from the flanks. It was a strategy that had won wars for thousands of years. Aboard the Earth observation post hidden in the asteroid belt, Communications Officer Yuri Song watched the approaching battle through intercepted transmissions. Her hidden sensors could detect both fleets without being seen. "Admiral Kim, you need to see this," she transmitted to Luna Base. "The Council is about to engage the Devourers. Their formation isn't traditional." Admiral Dae-Ho Kim's voice crackled through the secure channel. "Traditional how?"
Line of battle.
"Capital ships in front, support vessels behind. They're fighting like this is the old days. And the Devourers?" Yuri checked her readings. "Still consuming the planet. They don't seem concerned about the approaching fleet at all." The battle began exactly as Fleet Admiral Vexenal expected. His dreadnoughts opened fire with massive energy cannons that could destroy cities. Thousands of plasma bolts and particle beams lanced across space toward the Devourer fleet. "Direct hits across their front line," reported Weapons Officer Colthex. "Multiple enemy vessels showing damage, but then something impossible happened. The damaged Devourer ships began to change. Their hulls shifted and reformed. Damaged sections were absorbed and rebuilt. Within minutes, they looked exactly as they had before the attack. How is that possible?" Vexenal demanded. Scanner Prime Helmax's voice carried confusion and growing fear. "Admiral, their ships are adapting. The damage points are being reinforced. They're becoming immune to our weapons." The Devourer counterattack came without warning. Instead of returning fire with similar weapons, they launched something completely different. Swarms of tiny machines that moved like living things. The mechanical insects swarmed over the Council ships, eating through armor and shields like acid. "Point defense systems, fire," ordered Captain Nelvara of the Velkari cruiser Storm of Justice. But the tiny machines were too small, too fast, and too numerous. They covered her ship like a metallic plague. Within minutes, the Storm of Justice went dark. Then the cruiser next to it. Then an entire squadron of destroyers. "All ships retreat to secondary positions," Vexenal commanded. But the Devourers were already adapting to their retreat pattern. Machine ships moved to cut off escape routes with perfect coordination. Yuri Song watched in horror as the Council's perfect battle formation collapsed into chaos. "Admiral, they've lost over 1,000 ships in the first hour. The Devourers are learning from every attack. The retreat became a rout. Species that had fought together moments before now blamed each other for the disaster. Velkari ships accused Aquilian forces of cowardice when the bioships pulled back to regroup. Draconian Empire vessels demanded support that other fleets couldn't provide. 'This is War Marshal Kexthul to all ships,' came a transmission from the Hegemony's command vessel. 'The enemy is using adaptive technology beyond our understanding. We must fall back and reassess.' "Fall back?" roared Admiral Thekvar. "The Velkari Empire does not retreat. Then the Velkari Empire will be destroyed," Kexthul replied coldly. "Look at your casualties." The argument continued across open channels while Devourer forces pressed their advantage. The machines had learned to counter every weapon, every tactic, every strategy the Council used. Their adaptation was perfect and instantaneous. Captain Sujin Yang, monitoring from her hidden position in the Soul's Pride, shook her head in disbelief. "They're fighting like machines against machines. No creativity, no unpredictability." Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Wu Jin Nam, studied the battle data. "The Devourers adapt to logical responses, but the Council is being completely logical. Line formations, predictable flanking maneuvers, textbook tactics. Human tactics would confuse them," Sujin observed. "But the Council doesn't think like humans." By the end of the day, the greatest fleet in galactic history had been reduced to scattered survivors limping away from the battlefield. 3,000 ships had been destroyed or captured. The survivors carried news that would terrify every world in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Vexnall sat in his damaged command center, staring at casualty reports that seemed impossible. Half his fleet was gone. The Devourers had barely taken any permanent damage. How do we fight an enemy that learns from every attack?
Asked his aide, Commander Yilseth. I don't know, Vexnall admitted.
They counter everything we do. It's like they can see our tactics before we use them. On the Hegemony flagship, War Marshal Kexthul faced his own crisis of confidence. Send word to all Council worlds, he ordered. Tell them the truth. Our conventional forces are insufficient. We need new strategies, new weapons, new ways of thinking. What if there are no new ways? Asked his intelligence officer. Kexthul didn't answer. He was beginning to suspect that the galaxy's greatest military minds might not be enough to win this war. Unknown to the Council leaders, the Devourers were already sending scout probes toward new targets. Their mechanical intelligence had analyzed the galaxy's military capabilities and found them wanting. The expansion could continue as planned, but deep in space, invisible to any scanner, human ships watched and learned. While the Council fought like they always had, humanity was preparing to fight like nobody ever had. Admiral Dae-Ho Kim received Yuri Song's final report with grim satisfaction. The Council's traditional tactics failed completely. Total disaster, sir. The Devourers adapted to everything they tried. Good, Dae-Ho said quietly. That means they'll be expecting more of the same. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Kim. The Council has shown us exactly how not to fight these machines. Now it's our turn to show the galaxy how it's done. Across the human fleet, captains and crews prepared for a different kind of war. They wouldn't fight like the proud species of the Galactic Council. They would fight like humans, unpredictable, creative, and absolutely refusing to lose. The war room deep beneath the Rocky Mountains had never seen so many important people at once. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat around the massive table, their faces lit by the glow of holographic displays showing star maps and alien ship designs. Admiral Dae-Ho Kim stood at the head of the table, his uniform crisp despite having worked for 36 hours straight. Beside him, General Bo-Rum Lee reviewed the intelligence reports one more time. The weight of Earth's future rested on the decisions they would make in this room. Ladies and gentlemen, Dae-Ho began, the galaxy is at war. We were not invited to participate, but that doesn't mean we can ignore what's happening out there. The president of the European Federation leaned forward. Admiral, with respect, these council species have technology centuries ahead of ours. What can we possibly do that they cannot? That's exactly the question we need to answer, General Bo-Rum replied. Dr. Min-Ho Choi has been working on some interesting projects. Doctor? Dr. Min-Ho Choi rose from his seat. He was a small man with thick glasses, but his mind contained some of humanity's most dangerous secrets. For the past 10 years, we've been developing weapons and technology based on one simple principle. We're the newcomers. We think differently. He activated a holographic display showing a sleek torpedo. This is a quantum torpedo. While alien shields are designed to stop energy weapons and solid projectiles, these torpedoes exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. They phase through shields as if they weren't there. Murmurs of amazement filled the room. The Chinese premier asked, "How many do we have?" 2,000 with production facilities capable of making 50 more per day, Min-Ho answered. But that's not our most important advantage. The display changed to show a dark, angular ship. This is the prototype stealth destroyer Soul's Pride. Our scientists discovered something the Council species never considered: quantum stealth fields. We can make our ships completely invisible to their sensors. Captain Su Jin Yang stepped forward. She was young for a starship captain, but her test flights of the Soul's Pride had proven her skills beyond doubt. The stealth field doesn't just hide us from sensors, it hides us from reality itself. We can move through space without leaving any trace we were ever there. The aliens fight wars like they always have, added her tactical officer, Lieutenant Wu Jin Nam. Big fleets, massive firepower, honor duels between capital ships. They think like generals from 1,000 years ago. But we think like guerrilla fighters, Su Jin continued. Hit hard, hit fast, disappear before they know what happened. Dr. Min-Ho activated another display. We've also developed electromagnetic pulse cannons. One shot can disable an entire alien battleship without destroying it. We capture their technology instead of turning it into scrap metal. The room buzzed with excitement, but the Russian president raised a concern. This all sounds impressive, but how many ships do we have? The council species field thousands of vessels each. General Boram smiled grimly. That's where human creativity comes in. Show them Engineer Kang. So young Kang was covered in grease and looked like she hadn't slept in days. But her eyes blazed with the fire of someone who loved solving impossible problems. We're not building a traditional fleet. We're converting everything that can fly. She showed images of mining ships bristling with missile launchers. Asteroid miners become missile platforms. Cargo haulers become troop transports. Even civilian passenger ships can carry quantum torpedoes. Every human ship in space is being quietly retrofitted, General Boram explained. The aliens see numbers. We see potential. A mining ship doesn't look dangerous, but it can carry enough firepower to destroy a cruiser. Intelligence Officer Jae-Sung Ryu activated his own display showing star charts dotted with red markers. We've been watching the Devourers for weeks now. They're machines, which means they think in patterns. Predictable patterns. What kind of patterns? Asked the African Union representative. They always consume planets in the same order, furthest from the star to closest. They always approach from the system's north pole. They always leave scouts in conquered systems for exactly 72 hours before moving the main fleet. Lieutenant Wu Jin nodded enthusiastically. Machines are logical, but logic can be exploited. They'll never expect attacks that don't make logical sense. Captain Su Jin pulled up tactical displays. The council species will fight them head-on, fleet against fleet. It's how they've always fought wars. But we're going to hit their supply lines, their resource-gathering operations, their communication networks. While the council fights the front door, added Jae-Sung, we'll sneak in through the windows. Admiral Dae-Ho looked around the room at the assembled leaders of Earth. I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. We're talking about taking our entire space fleet into enemy territory to fight machines that consume stars. But if we don't act, General Boram continued, the Devourers will eventually reach Earth. And by then, the council fleets may be destroyed. We'll face them alone with no element of surprise. The Japanese Prime Minister asked the question everyone was thinking. What are our chances? Dr. Min-Ho Choi adjusted his glasses. Mathematically, very low. But mathematics doesn't account for human stubbornness. Or human ingenuity, added So-Young Kang. The aliens have better technology, but we have something they don't. Desperation. When humans fight with their backs against the wall, we do impossible things. Tae-hyun. Oh, Earth's Minister of Defense stood up slowly. He was an old man who had seen humanity's first steps into space and now faced its greatest challenge. I've read the intelligence reports. I've studied the alien transmissions. The council species think we're children playing with toys we don't understand. He paused, looking at each person in the room. Maybe it's time to show them what children can do when nobody's watching. The vote was unanimous. Operation Thunderstrike was approved. Over the next month, humanity mobilized in complete secrecy. Shipyards worked around the clock, hidden from alien sensors by the same stealth technology that protected the soul's pride. Mining stations became weapons factories. Civilian freighters disappeared into hidden bases to be fitted with armor and guns. Captain Su Jin Yang led training missions throughout the solar system, teaching human pilots how to fight against technology beyond their understanding. Her wingman, Mi Young Kwan, developed new fighter tactics based on human reflexes rather than computer calculations. Machines think fast, Mi Young explained to her squadron, but they think in straight lines. Humans think in curves, loops, and crazy spirals. Use that? Intelligence flowed in from Jae-Sung Ryu's hidden observation posts. Devour fleet movements, council battle plans, alien technology specifications. Knowledge was humanity's greatest weapon. As the secret fleet assembled, word spread quietly through Earth's military. They were going to war against machines that ate stars, armed with experimental weapons, flying ships held together with determination and human engineering. Most species would have been terrified. Humans just started making lists of targets. Admiral Dae-Ho Kim stood on the bridge of the newly completed flagship Gangnam Victory, watching the assembled fleet through the view screen. 200 ships hung in space, invisible to any scanner the aliens possessed. It wasn't a large fleet by galactic standards, but it was humanity's fleet. And they were about to remind the galaxy that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one you never see coming. All ships report ready for jump, reported Communications Officer Yuri Song. Signal the fleet, Admiral Deho ordered. Operation Thunderstrike is now active. Let's go show these machines what humans do best. The fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving no trace they had ever existed. The galaxy was about to discover that counting out humanity was a very big mistake. The massive space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most cities, with gleaming metal walls and countless lights blinking across its surface. Ships from 12 different alien species docked at its ports, their crews walking through corridors that had seen 1,000 diplomatic meetings. Today was different. Today, the Galactic Council faced their greatest threat. Ambassador Thekvar of the Velkari Empire stood at the center of the Great Hall. His blue skin seemed to glow under the bright lights as he spoke to the assembled representatives. His voice carried the weight of fear that few had ever heard from the proud Velkari. The Devourers have consumed another system, he announced, his words echoing in the vast chamber. Kepler 442c is gone. Not just the planet, the entire star system. They ate the planets, the moons, even the star itself. Murmurs of concern rippled through the crowd. The 12 species that made up the Galactic Council had ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They had fought wars, made peace, and built an empire that stretched across hundreds of star systems. But they had never faced anything like the Devourers. Councillor Zethmar of the Aquilian Federation raised one of his 4 arms. His fish-like head tilted as he spoke in his watery voice. How many systems have they taken now? 7, Thekvar replied. 7 complete systems in just 2 months. Our scouts report their machines. Artificial intelligence gone wrong. They consume everything in their path to build more of themselves. War Marshal Kexthal of the Hegemony slammed his armored fist on his desk. The sound rang out like a gunshot. His insect-like face showed anger through his compound eyes. Then we destroy them. The combined fleets of the Council have never lost a war. It won't be that simple, said Councillor Velterra of the Crystalline Union. Her voice sounded like wind chimes as light passed through her transparent body. These machines adapt. They learn from every attack. Our usual tactics may not work. The debate continued for hours. Species that had fought each other for centuries now argued about how to fight together. The Draconian Empire wanted to attack immediately with their powerful warships. The telepathic collective suggested trying to communicate with the machines first. The silicon-based lifeforms of the core worlds offered to share their technology. But through all their planning, none of them mentioned Earth. In a smaller meeting room, several council members gathered around a holographic display. The image showed a small blue and green planet orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked peaceful with white clouds swirling over its surface. What about the humans? Asked Junior Counselor Hemrix, a young representative from a minor species. They've been asking to join the council for 50 cycles now. Zethmar laughed, a sound like water bubbling. The humans? They only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They're barely out of their home system. But they have shown remarkable progress, Hemrix insisted. Their technology advances very quickly. War Marshal Kexthal's mandibles clicked in amusement. Progress? They still fight wars on their own planet. They can't even unite their own species, let alone help us fight machines that consume stars. Thekvar nodded in agreement. The humans are irrelevant to this discussion. They have perhaps 100 ships, maybe less. What could they possibly contribute to a war of this scale? Besides, added Zethmar, why waste time and resources in forming primitives? They would only get in our way. Or worse, they might panic and do something stupid. The room fell silent as they all agreed. When the Council sent out the galaxy-wide call for military assistance, Earth would not receive the message. The humans would never know about the Devourer threat until it was too late. Far across the galaxy on Earth's moon, Admiral Daeho Kim sat in the command center of Luna Base. The facility was built into the moon's surface, hidden from view but equipped with the most advanced sensors humanity could build. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens showing data from across the solar system and beyond. Admiral, called Chief Analyst Hai-Jin Park from her station. I'm picking up unusual transmissions from the galactic core regions. Daeho walked over to her workstation. He was a tall man with graying hair and serious eyes that had seen humanity's first tentative steps into space. What kind of transmissions? Encrypted communications between council worlds, Heejin replied, her fingers dancing across her keyboard. The encryption is military grade. Very sophisticated. Can you break it? Hyojin smiled. Give me time. Human computers are getting very good at this sort of thing. For the next 6 hours, Hyojin and her team worked to decode the alien transmissions. They used every trick they had learned, every algorithm they had developed. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. Admiral, Heejin said finally, her voice tight with worry. You need to see this. The decoded messages painted a terrifying picture. Machine intelligences consuming entire star systems, a threat that had already destroyed 7 civilizations, the Galactic Council preparing for war. But nowhere in the messages was there any mention of Earth. They didn't tell us, Daeho said quietly. They know about this threat and they didn't tell us. There's more, Hyejin added. I found fragments of council meeting records. They specifically decided not to inform Earth. They think we're too primitive to help. Daeho stared at the data for a long moment. Outside the command center's windows, Earth hung in space like a blue jewel. It looked so peaceful, so vulnerable. If these devourers continued their advance, they would eventually reach the solar system. Earth would be consumed just like those other worlds. Contact the Defense Committee, he ordered. Emergency meeting in 2 hours. What will you tell them? Hyejin asked. Daeho turned away from the window. That the galaxy is at war and nobody bothered to invite us. But these devourers don't care about politics. If they're not stopped, they'll reach Sol eventually. He paused at the door of the command center. And maybe it's time to show the galaxy what humans can do when everyone counts us out. As alarms began to sound across Luna Base, summoning Earth's military leaders to their most important meeting ever, the Galactic Council continued their debates millions of light years away. They had no idea that their dismissal of humanity would prove to be their greatest mistake. The war for the galaxy was about to begin, and nobody expected the humans to show up.